Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Better Workdays podcast. I'm your host, Andy Morrison from Real Custom Training. Just a moment ago, before I started recording, if you're watching the stream, you can see I'm holding up a folded, crumpled up name tag that I had been wearing and took off to start recording. But then I thought about it, and I actually want to talk about this name tag to start this episode, because it kind of encapsulates a lot of what's going on in my head, stuff I want to talk about on the podcast, but I'm having trouble articulating. And that's this. I am tired, sick and tired of the leadership development arena, and specifically like influencers in the personal development, leadership development field, even especially on social media, dumb social media, but also what's supposed to be the smart social media, also on LinkedIn. And this is why I said I struggle to articulate, because I don't want to spend a half hour complaining about this, and I feel like I can't yet talk about it without complaining. I want to talk about it and maybe be critical and be funny, but be analytical more so than just dumping on it. But suffice to say, folks, a professional leadership, hold on, let me back that one up, because this is going to be clippable. Okay. Here's my point. I'm a leadership development facilitator. I train people in what is commonly referred to as leadership development. So I feel like when I say I'm so sick of the leadership development world, part of that makes me a little sad, because I'm like, oh, but that's the world I'm in. You know what I mean? Like, if I go to a conference, it's going to be that conference. I'm not going to go to the conference for auto mechanics. I'm a friggin' leadership facilitator and trainer, right? So it's been disheartening. When I started Real Custom Training, I've been working in like corporate training and incumbent employee development for about 8 years. I've been running Real Custom Training and teaching for 4 years now. And when I started it, it was like, all right, let me dive into this world of talent development, leadership development, all that type of stuff. And I've learned so much, but it has been disappointing to kind of, at least from a networking sense and on LinkedIn and everything, to just see, I don't see people out there practicing what we preach, and how does this tie into the chamber? Because the reason the chamber triggered this thought for me is I don't want to see or read or hear another article ever about a billionaire leader. I don't want to hear about Jeff Bezos. I think there's enough going on right now in our culture, in the news, to turn all of us off of the idea that the billionaire elites in our society and in our world are necessarily always worthy of being held up as models of behavior and virtue and principle and character. Those are the things that comprise leadership, much more than whether you are globally successful. I don't care. I think somebody can run a 3-person landscaping firm with more integrity than somebody running a $1 billion multinational firm. You know what I'm saying? I'm tired of the stuff that's not real. And this isn't a pun on my business name, Real Custom Training. I guess it works out that way. But I'm just tired of the bullshit. I'm tired. Put it this way, folks. If somebody has a publicist, don't trust anything you read about their leadership style. If you want to know what a leader's style is like and the true effect they're having on other people around them, the people who work for them and with them, if you really want to measure that, the leader is not the person to talk to. You talk to the people and you observe and you find out what really happens in that organization up and down at every single level, and that will tell you what you need to know about the leader. So I'm tired of LinkedIn and Bezos and Musk and just all this garbage out there. They are not the heroes that we need right now. The heroes we need are people that were gathered at the Northeastern Connecticut Chamber of Commerce meeting today. Now, I'm going to get off the soapbox and I'm going to bring this down to a very real, very practical maybe even seemingly simple leadership lesson that was demonstrated by the Northeastern Connecticut Chamber of Commerce today. Full disclosure / humble brag, I am on the board for the chamber, so I guess I'm biased. The event today was the legislative breakfast, an event that the chamber holds every year. I'm sure chambers all over the country and world, right? Is Chamber of Commerce an international thing? Regardless, stay focused, Andy. It's season 3. Bring your A game. Legislative breakfast. In the past, and I've been going to these for, I don't know, probably like 10 years now, because I used to be a reporter where I live. So I was going to things as a reporter. Now I'm going as a business owner. The legislative breakfast in the past was always a panel, all the legislators, so state reps, state senators, all at the front of the room, all the business people, chamber members sitting in the back, and they would field questions for a while, right? Pretty standard, what you might call a town, I guess, like a town hall open forum, some moderation, some topics and stuff, but pretty much freewheeling. You could go and you could ask them, if you got a chance to ask a question, you ask them whatever you want. Here's the leadership lesson. The reason I love the chamber, and Elle, the executive director, and Nancy deserve all the credit. Oh, no, I shouldn't say all. Obviously deserve a ton of the credit, but their board as well supports them in these things. The leadership in action that I want to highlight from that Chamber of Commerce meeting is this. They changed their format this year. Now, I don't know if people were clamoring for that. I don't think they were getting a ton of feedback saying this format's not working for us, but that's where the leadership comes in from Elle and Nancy and the board that governs them as employees to allow them to, look at something and say, it's working. Yes. Could it be better? Could it be better? It's working, but could it be better? Would it be worth it to be better? And I know with the chamber, they looked at it and said, what's the purpose of the event? And that is a leadership principle in action. When you stop and remind yourself, what is the purpose here? What's the intention? Whether it's your personal behavior, what intention do I have in this situation? Your organizational behavior. What's our intention with holding this event? What do we really want to achieve? Now let's think about the way we've been doing it. Even if it's working, could it better help us achieve that goal? It's result orientation. It is an essential part of your leadership mindset, result orientation, and getting better, continuous improvement, even when stuff is working. So what the chamber did, they tweaked the format this year. Rather than all the legislators at the front, the chamber had people gather in around big tables, and it was a round table. So the round table I was at was me, a local elected official, someone from WHZ, Strategic Wealth Advisors. Can't recommend them enough. Love them. They're a client. 2 folks from the Burns Insurance Agency, also a client. Love them. Someone from Jewett City Savings Bank, also a client. Love them. Loved everybody in the room. Basically, at our table, right, a cross-section of industries represented, and 2 of our state representatives, they took turns. Each of them spent about a half hour with us, and we just talked to them. And here's the amazing part of it, right? I have become, and I'm sure there's a lot of people, you could hear it. I mean, I just kind of exploded about this stuff. There's a lot of tension out there right now. And a lot of us feel hopeless when it comes to government, particularly at the federal level here in America. In the Epstein scandal, all that stuff, right? It's I in particular have been feeling pretty disconnected and just like apathetic was kind of healthier than just, I felt like if I kept tuning into state government and news and everything, I was a former state employee. I just felt like it's so frustrating. I just want to completely disconnect, but I still go to the chamber legislative meeting and I kind of keep up to date through the chamber. But honestly, I've like checked out. I'm one of those people who has just checked out. When you check out, I think it really allows cynicism to take root. At least it does in me. So I end up with the cynical, like, you start thinking of it as them, the legislature. Oh, those people in Hartford, they don't care. When you sit down at the table with them and have a conversation, that's the key. The format change facilitated actual conversation what happens at panel events is we call it a conversation, but it is not a conversation. It's performative. All right, folks. And this has nothing to do with the chamber panels in particular. This next bit I'm going to describe. I am talking about Q&A panels in general, especially with elected officials. It's performative on the elected officials' part, and it's performative on the questioner's part, right? People get up with questions. They got axes to grind. It's not actually a conversation. It's more of a debate. And sometimes it's more of a just, I'm going to give you a piece of my mind type of thing. The format going from the panel to the roundtable actually made it a real legitimate conversation with an elected official. And the effect it had for me was it made me feel foolish in a way for how cynical I had become, because it just reminded me, hey, these are men and women. It's a part-time legislature. What they're doing is pretty extraordinary. You know, I bet they put more hours in to their profession and their time as an elected official than I do. And I'd become one of those people who just wouldn't even really consider that. Would have been very dismissive of like, oh, these, elected officials and hacks. And that's not fair thinking. I'm just saying, like, to highlight how disconnected and cynical I've become about state and federal politics. But talking to the elected officials today was enlightening, made me kind of get back down to a human level of, oh yeah, even in government, it's just people, for the most part, I do believe, at least at the state level, people trying to do their best, people operating with good intentions. So the leadership lesson from all of that with the chamber, that format tweak worked terrifically. The reason I think it deserves to be highlighted as leadership in action is, as I said, it indicates the result orientation, the willingness to continuously improve. But I also think if you look at the context in which this occurred, I was thinking about this last night, actually. If you look at the context in which it occurred, I think there's an element of bravery to the executive director and her, I'm sorry, Nancy, I'm going to say assistant. I'm going to say assistant because your title is, but Elle and Nancy, if you know the chamber, it's Elle and Nancy, right? For the two of them let me give you the full context, right? Elle is the executive director of the chamber. I'm 40. She's a bit younger than me. Okay. I know you're not supposed to talk about a woman's age, right? Come on. Just to say, I think, that's to me, and I think to most people, like a relatively young age to become executive director of a fairly, large nonprofit entity like the Chamber of Commerce. And Nancy has been at the chamber for, she worked there under Elle's predecessor, the previous executive director, and now is working with Elle and growing the chamber. And just, I could do a ton of episodes about the work they've done together. But in this instance, what I want to applaud them for and offer as an example to consider and maybe emulate when we can out there is that, like I said, Elle is fairly new in the executive director role. She is taking the place of someone who was in that role for a long time and a very strong leader. I applaud Elle in the chamber, especially Elle, being in a new position. Filling big shoes could make a lot of people, I know I would start to feel a little bit insecure. I might stretch to really try to prove myself, and I might be averse to things like tweaking the format of a long-standing event. Because when you tweak the format, when you try anything new, you have to account for the learning curve. By tweaking that format today, they took a risk. Yes, it went well. It could have gone. They could have learned from this experiment. They could have learned, nope, there's a reason to do the panel format and not the round table. And it's this, and this. And now we know, let's go back. But my point is that if you take the risk of trying something new and you're in a leadership position where you're being judged, I would understand if you were more risk averse and said, you know what? I'm not going to change it. I think it would help, but if it doesn't help, I know I've got these folks that are going to say, oh, yeah, the event, new executive director, event's not as good. Geez. Whereas to me as a leader, I would applaud them for trying something new, even knowing it might reflect poorly on them as a leader, if the changes don't work out the way you thought they would. So my point with this is that leadership in action of the chamber's willingness to try something new and considering the executive director's unique circumstances, I think it's an especially noteworthy thing to do. That to me personally, and I'm hoping for my audience too, that is like I keep saying, leadership in action, where I see that has more of an influence on me than all the influencer garbage in the world regarding leadership and personal development. I want to focus more on the leaders in my business community and in my professional network. Folks like Elle and Nancy in the Northeastern Connecticut Chamber of Commerce who are busy doing good work. They are not out there trying to be influencers. They are just literally out there having an influence. And if you listen to Better Workdays, you know, my whole philosophy is leadership is essentially intentional influence for the better, right? Positive intentional influence. So when I see folks like that are out there having an influence, trying new things, improving events and relationships, I mean, I really think their format did more to strengthen the relationship between our region and the legislators who attended than any other similar local event I can think of. Because, crazy as it sounds, folks, guess what's still effective? Getting in the same room and talking. Not talking at each other, talking to each other, having conversations. If it sounds hippy-dippy and soft to you, then this is the wrong podcast for you. I'm surprised you stuck around this long. If you're with me so far, good. Let's get to work. Let's keep looking at leadership in action. That's what I want Better Workdays to be more about. So, season 3 of Better Workdays, we're going to have people like Elle from the Northeastern Connecticut Chamber of Commerce and Nancy, if she'll join us. I want those people, when I see them, and I'm thinking to myself, this is leadership in action. And I'm thinking to myself, Andy, you should really do a social media post about this, but I don't do it. Those are the folks I want to have on the podcast more. You know, I want to talk to them about that. And I don't want them to come in and try to prove they read a lot of leadership articles or they know all the terms. All that stuff doesn't matter because they're out there doing it. If they learn those terms and study stuff, it's going to help them. Most likely it'll help them if they use good resources. But the most important thing is they're just out there doing it. The leadership influencer world and the billionaires out there, folks, just start tuning it out. Okay. And that could include me. Believe me. I would rather, I like, this is the stuff that makes me sometimes like, I don't know if I should have gone into business for myself because I would rather make a living with a small customer base of entirely local businesses than running a global online corporate training platform, right? Who wouldn't like to be rich? Of course I'd like to be rich. I'm not willing to do that to get rich. And maybe I'm not even capable of doing that. But I would prefer, and I think I'm capable of developing a local audience base, a local customer base for Real Custom Training, and a decent, loyal audience for Better Workdays, an audience that, just like the folks who take our workshops, an audience that at the end of each episode will say, that was worth my time and it helped. That's the mission. Make it worth the time and make it helpful. So season 3 of Better Workdays, I'm going to bring in more people from my local business community, specifically to tell them how I think they're a great local leader to exemplify, what they do that to me exemplifies leadership in action. And then we're going to go broader too. We're going to bring in more guests from not the leadership influencer world, but guests from other worlds who have something to say about leadership, whether they would call it leadership or not. For example, I want to bring in, I really should have checked beforehand. Hold on a second. Where's my new favorite book in the world? Is it here? It is here. Oh, thank God. My new favorite book in the world, The Beavers of Popple's Pond. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a book about beavers. It's written by Patty Smith. Patty Smith is a naturalist at the Bonnievale Environmental Education Center in Brattleboro, Vermont. And this book is basically based on Patty's journals of studying a few generations of beavers in the behind her house in Vermont. That book, Patty's book, inspired me more than the, 6 or 8 leadership books that I read last year, because I think I'm at a point where, like, there are fundamental things to learn, and then you put them into action, and you're not done learning, but you can't keep going back to that well. You can't just keep reading articles on LinkedIn. You can't. You got to put this stuff into action. That's what I'm trying to drive home. That's why I want to talk to leaders who are just out there doing stuff. I don't want to talk to people who just talk about leadership all day. And I don't want to be one of those people either. And obviously I'm at risk of it because it's kind of what I do for a living. So yeah, we're trying to get Patty Smith on. I want to talk to her about this. And here's the thing, folks. We're still going to get leadership lessons from Patty Smith, right? You may not be sure how learning more about beavers can help you be a better boss in the workplace, but guess what? I'm sure, and I want to tell you about it, but I want to tell you about it by interviewing Patty and drawing her experience out and drawing some connections to the stuff we talk about at Real Custom Training and on Better Workdays. So our esteemed producer, Andrew Menzel, is hard at work booking guests for Better Workdays. I will also be reaching out to my local folks, but let me tell you this. If you're a customer of Real Custom Training, if you've taken a workshop of any length and any topic with us, I would love you to come on Better Workdays. I've had a few other past students come on. Some clients have come on to be interviewed. I mentioned this to a group the other day, the podcast, and I was surprised how many of them said, oh my God, I would love to come on. And I think I've been a little too hesitant to invite people on. So open invitation. Anyone who ever wants to come on, talk about how the stuff you learned with Real Custom Training has actually helped you be a better boss out in the real world, you're in. Just let me know you want to, and we will make it happen. But Menners is out there booking some additional guests. And I gave him some names that I wasn't sure he'd be able to get because I like these folks so much. These are people whose podcasts I listen to that have been tremendously helpful to me. And I want to see if they can be tremendously helpful to you as well. And so I gave Menners these names almost like saying, yeah, sure, book me a movie star. It's like, is he really going to get Malcolm Geit? And one of the people on that kind of stretch list of folks I wasn't sure we'd get was the first person Menners booked. Menners is the man. Piccolo Podcast, folks. Can't recommend him enough. And that person is named Glenn Ambrose. And I'm going to leave you with this little preview. The next episode of Better Workdays, I'm going to be talking to Glenn Ambrose. Now, Glenn, similar to Patty Smith and her book about the beavers, Glenn may not also be the most obvious connection in terms of how he relates to Better Workdays and leadership development. And it might not be obvious because Glenn is a internationally known spiritual advisor. And Glenn specifically helps high-achieving individuals move from success to significance, okay? I found Glenn about a year ago because, long story short, through my own personal development and therapy and stuff, I finally did something my therapist had been telling me to do for a long time, and I started to try meditating with the Insight Timer app. And I found Glenn's podcast on there. And let me tell you, in terms of finding leadership lessons in areas that aren't explicitly talking about leadership in a professional development context, in a corporate context, Glenn's podcast has been the biggest source of connections and deepening my understanding of principles, based leadership, and how the way you lead. It's been incredibly eye-opening and heart-opening, if you'll forgive a cheesy phrase. And that is all thanks to the podcast called Life Lessons and Laughter with Glenn Ambrose. It's been tremendously helpful to me. I oftentimes listen to it and think, I would love to ask Glenn about this connection to leadership stuff, or this one, or this one. And I got the chance. I got to interview Glenn recently. He was awesome. You're going to find out for yourself on the next episode of Better Workdays when our special guest is internationally known spiritual advisor, Glenn Ambrose. Thanks a lot, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to this week's Better Workdays. If this episode helped you, then there's a good chance Real Custom Training could help your entire organization. Visit us online at realcustomtraining.com, and you can learn all about how our leadership development programs are helping people work better together.